Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Pacesetters. This week we've got a man who is absolutely setting the world on fire, particularly in the Hunter region this season, but he's been doing it forever and a day as it is. Anyway, welcome to the show, Michael Formosa.
Hi Paul, thanks for having me.
Mate, I do the sprint lane every week and I look back on the week that was and I seem to be writing your name or saying your name every single week, and all I talk about is winners, so that's a pretty good sign, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been having a bit of luck lately. Lockdown certainly helped. Getting a few more opportunities in the sulky of late with a lot of the Sydney drivers not being able to come up. So yeah, just trying to make the most of it while I can.
You've been doing it for a while. You still get the same thrill as you always have when you land a winner?
Yeah, I do actually. I love doing it. I've been doing it a long time. It's a great thrill to win, especially when you're training yourself. So yeah, no, I still enjoy it and get up every day and look forward to it.
So when we say we've been doing it for a while, let's go right back to the start. What does that journey look like? How did you first come to be part of harness racing?
Well, I sort of was. I've had a like for horses ever since I was young. My grandfather and my auntie and uncles had horses, but I lived a long way away from them, so I could only ever spend time with the horses on school holidays and things like that. And then when I left school, I actually got an apprenticeship as a mechanic, and I was a mechanic for like 8 years. And then my father bought a horse, and I got sort of interested in it that way. So I was about, I think, 20 when I had my first race drive. But yeah, I had a bit of a journey along the way before I got my license, and that I started off with my relatives, and my grandfather and uncles and things like that. But then I met up with a guy called Ross Chisholm, and started off with him. He sort of gave me a lot of the trial drives and got me going that way.
I was going to bring up the name Ross Chisholm with you. I'm glad you brought it up first. He has been a considerable mentor for you along the way, hasn't he?
Yeah, me and Mark Callaghan, we both went to school together, and both got into the horse game at the same time. And Ross was really good to us, and we spent a lot of time there, learned a lot off Ross. He gave us a few opportunities, and we all made the most of them and kicked off from there. So,
mate, 8 years as a mechanic. What are we working on? Can you paint a bit of a picture for me about what the workshop scenario looked like?
Well, I was a mechanic for, I started off with Holden, and I was basically with Holden most of the time. The dealership I was working at moved for a period, and while it was in a changing stage, I went and worked with Toyota for a while, but when the new dealership opened, went back to Holden. But once I started with the horses, that sort of really kicked me along, and I sort of left the mechanic trade and went into the horse industry then.
What were you doing? Were you doing mainly warranty checkups or doing the service run, or what was happening?
I was a fully qualified mechanic in the end, and just used to basically do whatever we had to do, servicing, fix cars basically, and whatever had to be done. I was sort of I had like race cars as a hobby back then, drag cars, and I really liked that. But as I said, once I got the taste for the real horses, that changed my life after that.
You went from horsepower to horses, eh? So all right. Across that 8-year journey, how far into that are you, and how long in that 8-year journey as a mechanic are you sort of thinking about making the move, and horses might be, what you prefer to be doing?
I was probably towards the end. Probably the last 2 years of my trade that I sort of started to get more and more interested in the horses. And I actually, at one stage there, I was working 2 jobs. I was working as a mechanic in the daytime, and then I got a job at night time working in a factory doing maintenance. And that was sort of going to be my crossover. I was going to do the horses in the day and work at night in the factory. So at one stage, I was doing all 3 at once, which is quite hard, and I couldn't sort of take that for too long. I'd done that for about 6 months. But then once I started with the horses, I actually kept working at night. I actually enjoyed working at night. It was pretty good until I I had a bad race for about 1998, and I broke my neck, so I sort of was out for a long time after that. And then when I came back after injury, I just basically went straight into the horses full time then.
Yeah, okay. The race, I was going to bring the race fall up a little bit later, but you've alluded to it now. It was a pretty tough time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I wasn't young yet. I wasn't a teenager or anything. I was in my early 20s, but it was a pretty bad accident. Probably didn't really realise how bad it was then, now looking back at it, because I just never at any stage did I doubt I'd never do the horses again, even though I was told I never would. I wouldn't do this and I wouldn't do that, but not at any stage did I never ever think I'd get back to normal. It took a while. It took about 10 months before I was able to get back on my feet again. But yeah, once I got back, I was never going to go back and work a normal job again.
It was bad enough. Didn't you have a sort of one of those big kind of braces around your neck in your head, sort of for a period of time, in order to try and repair you?
Yeah, I did. I had surgery. I had to wait 2 weeks to have surgery because there was only one guy basically in the Southern Hemisphere that could do the operation. So I had to wait for 2 weeks for him to do the operation. And once I had the operation, they basically said, as soon as you can get up and walk around, you can go home. So I was in a hurry to get home. So I basically, I think it was only 2 or 3 days, and I got up and started walking and said, okay, I'm ready to go now. So it wasn't long after that till I started, walking, and I had as you say, the brace on me. That was for like 3 months after as well. I had a lot of help along the way. It definitely wasn't easy. But yeah, I was young enough and healthy enough to overcome it.
Like in those early stages, what was the worst? Like, was the diagnosis, as bad as perhaps people might presume it would be? There's an element that's a pretty delicate and dangerous part of the body to be injuring around your neck and the spinal cord. How bad was some of the early fears for you?
Yeah, well, I didn't really realise how bad it was until I was in hospital waiting to I actually got transferred from Maitland Hospital to Royal North Shore, and you got no idea how uncomfortable it is just laying there all the time. You get sore ankles, you get sore heels, everything hurts just from laying in the one spot. And I sort of went to move while I was in Royal North Shore, and the nurse come running over to me screaming, don't move, don't move. You can't move until you have this surgery because you could damage your spinal cord. And then I thought, oh, that's pretty big sort of news to take. So I took it fairly seriously after that.
Yeah, I guess getting back into sulky and being in and around horses again. Firstly, you probably realised how lucky you were to be doing it. When you got to that point. But was it baby steps? Like, was there some nervous energy around going back into that world, given how bad it was for you there for a period of time?
Not for me, it wasn't. I sort of never at any stage never really worried me. I just knew I wanted to do, and I wanted to do it as soon as I could. It was more everyone around me, like my family and friends. Ross Chisholm and his wife Margaret and Mark Callaghan. They was probably sort of more worried about me than I was when I started back with the horses. But, I never rushed it. I'd never done anything silly, of course, and just sort of done what I sort of thought was right at the time, and everything worked out for the best.
Yeah. If we go further back before the fall, so you're about 20 and you decide that you're going to start racing. These days, and firsthand with your own kids, they're coming through the mini trot system, and they're learning how to do it. And that, I guess, at 20, you're kind of a late bloomer, and coming into it. What did you have to learn really rapidly and quickly, being coming into the world of harness racing and being in and around horses and doing it competitively on such a big stage?
Yeah, it was totally different back then. We still had to have our 20 trial drives back then, but I'd done a lot of my trials and gymkhanas in the Sydney area, and back then the Gymkhanas used to race for prizes, and the trials were quite rough and ready. And you really, every time you went out there, you had to concentrate because it was quite rough, and the older guys would knock you around a little bit, and you had to learn pretty quick. Whereas today the trials are it's just like track work, and people let you in and let you out. So it's probably, you learnt quicker back then. But I was older as well. I wasn't a 16-year or 15-year-old kid that sort of didn't have any experience. So I was sort of an older person, so I sort of picked it up pretty quickly, and always had good people around me, and especially Ross, and he was terrific, and so I never really had any trouble picking it up. As I said, was always into the horses, and I used to spend a lot of time with them on the holidays when I was young and that.
Yeah. And was it an immediate, you took to it immediately, you just, as soon as you started it, because you had that kind of feel that that's what you wanted to do, but when you got into it, you were pretty comfortable. Yep, I'm in the right place here. This is exactly what I knew I wanted to do, and I'm doing what I need to do here. Yeah,
well, I've always sort of played sports and that when I was young, but I was always very small. So, I played rugby league and I was too small for that. And I'd done boxing for a while and I really enjoyed that. But and once I started the horses, I just really clicked with it. And it was a real challenge. And anyone will tell you that trains horses, it's a challenge because you're trying to not only train yourself, but you're training an animal that can't speak to you. So it's a real challenge, and it's really rewarding when you can win a race anywhere, especially with something that you've put all the work into.
Yeah. So you go through the years, and I'm going to jump forward a long way, but you end up really striking a lot of luck with one of the best horses that certainly the Hunter region's seen, but this state with Ultimate Art, and that horse has a really special place in your heart, doesn't it?
Yeah, he was a great horse for us. Before that, I was having quite a lot of luck. I was training for an owner who used to buy a lot of New Zealand horses, and that sort of really put me. I was winning a lot of races at Harold Park and Newcastle, and won quite a few premierships up here, and finished in the top 4 trainer drivers in New South Wales for a number of years. And I just decided, I'm going to start buying my own horses and see where it leads me. And I went and bought him and didn't pay a lot of money for him. And he turned out to be one hell of a horse, took us over the country and really sort of set us up and changed the way I approached the industry a little bit. I sort of was getting a little bit sour, training a lot of horses for a lot of different people, and got him, and he sort of, since then I own probably half of my stable at the moment, although it's not the bee's knees owning your own horses, because sometimes when they're not all racing it's quite difficult to make ends meet. But that was the path I chose. Now that Chloe's sort of helping me now, I'm sort of going a little bit the other way and probably sourcing out outside horses, but he was great for us. And if I never ever get another horse as good as him, I'm just forever grateful that I had him.
Yeah. How early? Because you had him, as a foal. How early did you know you've got a good one here?
Well, it was funny because when I bought him from the yearling sales, I was on a tight budget, and I wasn't looking at the expensive horses, but I looked at him and thought he was in my budget, but he was just such a nice horse. I thought, I don't think I'll get him. He's just he had everything about him, even at that young age. And I ended up getting him for a steal, and then I thought, geez, something must be wrong with him. I haven't picked up, but he was just faultless from day one. I never ever pushed him early. I just let him float around and do his own thing, and I probably never really had not that I didn't have an opinion of him, because he always had a great attitude and great gait. I just never thought he would be such a good young horse, because he just done everything at his own pace, and I had other young horses that were up and running and felt the goods, but when the pressure came, there was nothing there, and he was the opposite. He was just floating around doing his own thing, and the first day I asked him to work, he just blew my mind away, and I just thought, Jesus, this horse could be anything.
Yeah. Amazing record. About $620,000 in earnings. That's not a bad investment, then, is it?
Yeah, that's right. And I only paid $7,000 for him, and he won bonuses along the way. And but the thing that, you know, when you get those horses, it's not in the end, it's not about the money. It's about the experience and the other things that they can do for you. And we just had that many trips away with him, and travelled all over the countryside with him, and met a lot of nice people along the way.
You retired him at a point where it just probably was getting a little bit hard for him going around in some of the better races.
Yeah, well, he raced really competitive his whole life, and then I think I was going to retire him when he was about 8 years old, and he was having a spell, and I thought, I'm going to get a few mares in foal to him instead of having to wait another year. And I think he served about 8 or 9 mares. Only one was ours, the rest were all outside ones. And then he come back from a spell, and it just wasn't as focused as he used to be. He was 9 years old, and we give him a few starts, and he just started to have a few little niggling problems. And just decided then, you know, he's had enough, and he can retire and hopefully live the rest of his life at our place.
And there's obviously a sad ending to that story, isn't there? Obviously, an accident that you know, he lost his life to.
Yeah, we actually we hadn't really had a lot of decent holidays while we had him, because most of the time our holiday was basically we'd go away racing him somewhere, and we'd just started going overseas, and we went overseas the year before, and we decided, you know, that was such a great time, we'll go again the year after. And that year I went while I think I was only gone 2 or 3 days, and he'd been bitten by a snake, and lost his life.
I can't imagine what that feeling's like for you to have basically been with that horse his whole life, essentially, turn him into a champion, giving him a great life on and off the track, and then set him up for retirement, and then something like that happens. It must have been so shattering.
Yeah, it was. I took it pretty hard, to be honest, and people will never understand. You know, sometimes you get so attached to these animals, and it was quite a difficult time. It took me a long time to get over it. I don't think I'll ever get over it because it was like one of the family. But it was hard, but you sort of move on, and he's buried here, and we've got a lot of great memories, a lot of photos and videos and whatnot of him. So he was a very happy-go-lucky horse, and I don't think he'd want anyone to feel sad for him. So we just moved on, and we've got his foal here now. He's a rising 2-year-old, and he's a big strapping horse like him, and he's got all his characteristics. So hopefully he can get to the races and give us something else to cheer on.
Yeah. How far away is that, do you think?
Well, as I said, he's a rising 2-year-old, so I mean, he's exactly like Ultimate Art was. He didn't sort of strike me as being a 2-year-old, so he might surprise us like he did. And but yeah, hopefully by the end of the year he can show us if he's going to make it as a 2-year-old or not.
Yeah, obviously you got your fingers crossed and high hopes, but given you saw something in Ultimate Art at such an early stage, are you sensing that you've got a good one on your hands there?
It's a bit of a hard call. I've probably got such a soft spot for this guy that I'm maybe seeing things that aren't there, but I really like him at this stage. And at the end of the day, whether he wins a race or returns into a champion, he's always going to have a home here. So at the end, it doesn't really matter how he turns out, as long as he's happy and healthy. That's all that matters to me.
Yeah. Has he got a name yet?
Freddie, we called him.
Freddie, yeah. Because was it Thomas was Ultimate Art?
Thomas was Ultimate Art, yeah. We called this guy Freddie because basically after Freddie Mercury, there was a song, Freddie Mercury, sang that reminded us of Thomas, so that's what we called him.
Yeah, that's nice. It's nice that you've continued to perpetuate that, after, such a family favourite as well. It was a bit of a punter's pal too, Oliver Art, given how successful he was on the track. So, I think there'd be a lot of people hoping that this one delivers the goods for you. So we've talked about succession of horses. Let's talk a little bit about succession of the driving ranks. You mentioned Chloe before. She's made a stunning arrival into the driving ranks. We're only talking a couple of months, but she's announced herself in pretty good fashion.
Yeah, she has. She's had a good grounding with the mini trot. She was lucky enough to drive a really good pony called Lumberjack Willie. She won 2 Miracle Miles with him, run second in the Inner Dominion in Melbourne, and also represented New South Wales in New Zealand, where she won a race on Inner Dominion Grand Final night in Auckland. So she's had a good grounding. It's a hell of a lot different driving a pony to a big horse, but she's been around the horses all her life, and she's done pony club and barrel racing and all that sort of thing. So she sort of doesn't say much. She left school at the end of year 9. She really didn't like school. Sort of couldn't see the point sending her back for another year. I thought it was best if we give her a traineeship, and she's working here now, and she sort of seems to be going well. At first, I thought she just didn't like school that much, that she'd basically do anything not to go back. But the last probably 3 or 4 months, she's really started to kick along and take a bit more interest in the horses, and it's starting to show in her driving.
How's that impacted on the father-daughter relationship now that you've got to work it?
Not too bad. She's at that age where she's getting interested in boys and things like that. I don't take that very well, but it's not too bad. As I said, she doesn't say much. We're sort of fairly busy most of the day, so it's not as if we get a lot of time to sort of just talk about stuff in general. It's basically business as usual through the day. But no, she's handling it well. I'm sort of really proud of her, and I think if she puts her mind to it, and she can do quite well.
It's not about effort. Not everyone gets to win the first time that they go around in a race and win. And there was no certainty about that horse she was on that night, and she delivered in fine style. It was a really good result. Yeah,
it was. My first race drive, I come last, so I said to her, if you don't run last, you're doing better than me. So she's well and truly outshone me. But the horse that she drove, it's one of ours. We've had it since it was a young horse, and she'd had quite a lot of experience driving at home. But he was one of those horses, he just always gets back, 1 or 2 spots further back than he should do, and he's sort of always finishing off his race as well, but he's just missing out. But she done really well. She had him in a really good spot and drove him a treat, and got the chocolates, and it was a very tough start for her.
I can imagine how proud you must have been, mate. That must have been so good to see. There was a little bit of hype around announcing that she was going to drive that night. So a little bit of, there was newspaper articles. I know there was certainly something that we had on our website about it. How did you go about tempering some of that expectation and, sort of a little bit of the pressure that might have been on her going into that drive?
Yeah, well, we were hoping she was going to drive the week before, and it was just a little bit of a hold up with the licence process because of COVID and that. She was supposed to have an interview, which couldn't take place the week before, so they ended up doing a Zoom interview after that. But the week before, I basically had a team of horses all ready to go, and I actually think I got 3 winners the little week she was supposed to drive, and then the week later I thought, well, poor bugger, she's going to miss out this week, because I don't think, there's the chances are there like they were the week before. But to her credit, she got the horse over the line, but she didn't phase her. As I said, she doesn't say much, so it's hard to imagine what she's thinking. But she just took it all in her stride and went from there. Yeah,
and there's been a few times where you and her have been on horses in the same race, and I assume you might have the one that the family thinks might have the better hopes. And she's got the better of you a couple of times, hasn't she?
Yeah, it's funny. The first race she won, we had two on the same race, and I sort of was back in the field, and I couldn't actually see if she'd won the race or not. I thought she had won, but I was watching her from behind, and she's pretty casual. She doesn't, bounce around, or she's not really aggressive with the whip. And I thought she might have got beaten. I was thinking, gee, if you had got a little bit more aggressive, you might have got home. And then when I pulled up, I said, "Did you win?" She just said, "Yeah." As if it was a thousandth winner. It didn't phase her at all.
Gee, she's whether she inherited that humility or the humble nature.
Yeah, no, I'm really proud of her that way. She's not a show off or anything like that. She's pretty well grounded. I think a lot of other trainers and that would appreciate a kid like that coming through the ranks. We don't need layers around like. It's good to see kids with confidence in that, but we want to see them. Grounded as well.
Yeah, no, good point. So, is that part of the progression plan, Michael? That you move more into potentially the training side of things, and Chloe starts to take on more drives. Have you got a grand plan there?
Yeah, eventually. I still think, I've got a few more goals and things that I want to achieve. She's still quite young, just turning 16. I didn't sort of realise how young 16 was until she started driving, and it sort of worries me a little bit that how fragile these young girls are, if they get hurt. So I'll just let her gradually drive more and more and let her get more experience. I don't want to put too much pressure on her, and I don't want to just hand everything over on a platter as well. I want her to sort of earn the drives and learn what it's all about. As you know, and everyone else will tell you, this industry can be quite hard, and so I wanted to make sure she's got the grounding there to be able to handle, not just all the compliments, but all the criticism as well.
Yeah, is that some of the conversation that you guys have? I know you said it's limited, the conversation, but is that part of it around that? The whole learning side of it, not just what happens on the track, but how you deal with adversity, how you deal with criticism. Criticism's everywhere in the sports industry, but particularly in the racing industry, and for the participants who are delivering on something that other people have expectations on, and that could be their hopes, it could be as an owner, but it could be for punters as well, who certainly take it pretty hard when things don't go their way. Has there been conversations around that you guys have had?
Yeah, well, she's only basically, I think, had 3 outside drives. Other than that, she's drove for me, and she's basically drove pretty good every time. A couple of minor little mistakes here and there she's made, but we sit down after the races and go over the replays and talk about how she did. But at the moment, she's sort of done everything quite well. She knows, being my daughter, that there's a lot of ups and downs, and I tried telling her that you've got to always do your best, but sometimes you've got to have thick skin and just take the criticism as it comes, and not take things to heart. There's going to be people take horses off you or take you off horses along the way, and as long as you've done the best, and that's all you can do, and hopefully in the long run everything just works out.
Oh, that's really good learnings, I think, at an early stage. You said just before that you've still got some hopes and goals for yourself that you'd like to achieve. What are some of those?
Oh, it's not so much I've got, and I'd like to get, obviously, to train over 1,000 winners. I think I'm over 800 at the moment, and I'd like to get to at least 1,500 in the sulky. Maybe 2,000 would be good, but I don't think I've got enough time left for that. But I just feel I'm still fit enough and capable enough to get the job done, and I enjoy doing it. And it's also a big advantage to train and drive your own horses as well. There's not a lot of the time what they do on track work's nothing what they're like at the races. So, and you can make any fine adjustments after driving at the races. It makes a big help.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Inter-Dominions coming up in a few months, and one of the legs is in Newcastle. First time that it'll be raced there. As someone who's racing there all the time, and someone who's been part of Inter-Dominions in the past, it must be super proud that that it's going to be played out in your own backyard there.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I was lucky enough to drive in the very first Group 1 race ever held at Newcastle. That was back in about 1997 or 98. They had the Australian Pacing Championship there, and I used to get a lot of freelance drives in those better races back then. The Newcastle Mile, I used to nearly get a drive every year in that back then. So yeah, now I've got a good association with Newcastle. It's been good to me over the years, and it's good to see it progressing to have some of these better races. Ross Gigg was a big part of getting Newcastle off the ground and getting it where it is today, and the legacy he's left behind will carry Newcastle into the future for a very long time. Yeah.
Mate, as I said at the top of the show, I keep saying your name over and over again each week because you just keep winning, and let's hope that continues. Hey, it's maybe that 2,000 winners isn't that far away at the rate you're ticking them over this season. It's you're doing outstanding, and I think that you should be super proud of your achievements, not just along the journey, but particularly this year. You define Father Time, mate.
Yeah, no, hopefully, everyone in the game's got a goal, and I think you've got to have goals to keep driving yourself. Otherwise, it just gets a bit stale, even if the goals are sort of out of reach. As long as you sort of keep trying, I think it gives you something to look forward to and something to strive for. So, I'll always strive to do better and try and get better horses and win more races. But, I enjoy what I do, and as long as I'm fit and healthy, I'll keep doing it.
Let's say one of them spready, huh?
Yeah, I hope so. That'd be another dream come true, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think it'd be a beautiful fairy tale story too for to round out the journey that after such a good time and then such a horrible time, I guess, for your whole family and yourself, with the sad passing of Ultimate Art. But we might be able to come up with a happy ending to that one. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, no, it would be. As I said with him, as long as he's healthy and fine, he'll be here forever. And whether he turns out to be as good as his father or not, it really doesn't matter as long as he's as long as he we've still got something to hang on to, and yes, hopefully it all works out for him.
I think there's something in that for all of us, mate. Yeah. Hey, thanks for joining us on the show, Michael. It's been fantastic to talk a little bit about your journey. I know it's hard to wrap up, such an esteemed and long career, and it's been as good as yours in sort of the 20 minutes that we've allocated for this. But really appreciate you making some time to share your thoughts on the industry and a little bit of the journey that you've been on over all these years with the audience who've tuned in. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Pity the sun's in my eyes, but other than that, yeah, it was a great interview. Thank you very much.
I better let you go. You're going to get a tan and look like Phantom of the Opera there in a minute. So appreciate it. To everyone out there tuning in, thanks for watching on Pacesetters, and I look forward to bringing you another great guest next week on Pacesetters. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.